We are live. Okay, guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. Very excited for our guest tonight. We are in Ohio. We have got Austin Lawrence with us. How are you, brother? Welcome, man, to Let's Get Freaky.
Oh, thank you, man. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate it. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excited to have you, man. I'm good. I'm good. We was talking about the weather before. It's very
Yeah.
hot. It's very hot where I am right now. I know it's even hotter where you are. So I don't know how
Oh,
you're
yeah.
coping.
I stay inside. Like I said, I work midnight, so usually when I get off or when I go into work, it's not, well, it's still pretty bad, but it's not as bad as these day walkers, you know?
Yeah, man. I don't, I'm a night worker as well. So yeah, I don't know how they do it, man. I just
No, I
find
don't either.
I just find shade during the day. And
Right, right.
so you're a paranormal author, researcher. Um, tell us how you got into. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into the paranormal subject.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of us are just born weird, right? Like us, especially us night shift workers, we're a weird breed to begin with.
Yeah.
But I mean, even since I was a child, like 5 years old, I was researching the paranormal. Like I was so obsessed with it going all the way back. And I mean, part of it might be I'm in a over 100-year-old farmhouse on some native land. So some weird stuff going on there. But I was just always super fascinated with the paranormal. I mean, anything from cryptids to ghosts, and ghosts are kind of more my forte. Aliens, stuff like that. I've just loved all of it. Then later on in life, when I got the opportunity to start investigating, it was on from there.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That sounds so you're in a did you say 100-year-old barn?
Yeah, yeah, well, the city caps off the dates at 100 years for homes, and it doesn't have a date. It just says if you go to the courthouse, it just says really old. So it's
Oh
somewhere over
wow.
100 years old. We're not completely sure. No one knows.
Wow, man. So is that where you are now? Or was that where you were brought
Yes.
up? Oh,
Yep, yep.
cool. Wow. So have you got some spooky action going on there?
Oh yeah. I mean it comes and goes in waves. It seems like it'll be quiet for a while, then all of a sudden, the other day I came home and walking the door and the entire room just lit up like a flash from a camera, and I'm like, okay, you guys are back at it again. Um, so it'll. I mean, back as a kid, I would see a woman and a man walk up to my room, and kind of acknowledge me, plain as day. Um, I've had objects move, I've had voices, I mean, you name it, I've pretty much experienced it over, the past 30 some years here.
Man, so have you lived there like all your life?
Yes. Yep.
Oh wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Like I said, it's interesting how it comes in waves. It'll stop for months on end. I'll totally forget about it. Then the next day I'll be sitting here, especially as a night shifter, I'm usually eating at midnight is my lunch.
Yeah.
So I'll come down and eat my lunch, and then all of a sudden stuff will start happening. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. You know?
Yeah. Not today.
You're right,
I
right.
I'm finding that at the moment with like the house that I'm in now. I've been here for nearly 3 years, and
Hmm.
it seems to be on and off with activity. There
Yeah.
seems to be there's times there can be weeks where nothing really happens, and you sort of I won't say forget that it could be haunted or something, but you do. You just sort of relax a little bit, and then all of a sudden, like the period I'm in now, there seems to be a lot of weird stuff going on. And it just, I don't know what it is. Just every now and again, there's spikes, and my kids notice it. My wife notices it. I notice things, and we all experience it at the same time, and then it stops.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know if it's like them kind of recharging their batteries type of thing, or if it could be something residual, or even lately I've been working with a psychic medium, the only one I've ever trusted in my entire life. He's 100% legit. And he would tell me about how the veil is like this gelatinous material, and during the warmer months, the gelatin kind of liquefies, so it's easier for them to come through and communicate. And then during the winter time, people get less activity because it kind of like freezes up and it's harder for them to break through this veil. So I don't know if that has something to do with it or not. But yeah, it's really interesting how it kind of like you said, it'll stop and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're here. Like, oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like is this something because obviously when like you'll experience something like hear your name called or something like that,
hmm
and you sort of then you're starting to give it attention, and then I wonder if you're once the more energy you sort of give to it,
Exactly. Yeah,
the
I
more you get back.
100% believe in that. You feed into it, you'll probably get more activity.
Mhm.
There's just recently a case that someone was talking to me about where they think it was something more on the evil side. And it was their mother who's having this activity, and she wanted to keep communicating it with it, and they told them like, "Yo, you have to stop. Like, this has to end." But she doesn't want to, so the activity continues. And even though they went in, they cleansed and everything, she's still feeding into this energy, so it's still there, it's still active. But it makes sense. It's just like if I were to ignore you every day, you wouldn't come and talk to me. But if I were to say something to you, even something small, like, hey man, how's it going? The next time you would see me, you would, reciprocate that.
Yeah,
So,
100%, man. As much as I love the paranormal, and I love it sounds weird, but I do like experiencing stuff. But
mhm.
I don't want it in my house. But I do. I have had most experiences that I've had. I think have probably been in my house, not this house, but in the houses that I've been living in. But yeah, I don't want it in the house.
Yeah,
Is that
I totally understand that. It's something that me and my friends talk about all the time. We're like, man, we see like people saying they're getting out of the paranormal. It's like, man, I wish we had that option. Like, if I were to say I'm done investigating, it doesn't mean anything because once again, in my house, I'm still experiencing it. Or if I go out and I investigate and I come back home and there's activity here, it's like I just need to recharge. I need some rest. I need,
yeah, yeah,
so it can be frustrating.
yeah, mate. You need to be able to chill in your own room. Like
Right,
I think,
exactly.
and when you're waking up and there's things there and you're hearing noise, it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too much into me because this is your episode tonight, but I had something really weird happen a couple of nights ago,
Okay.
it freaked like I've experienced a few things in this house that have not really scared me. Like obviously,
hmm
when you hear something or you see something, it is scary.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I had something that happened about 2 nights ago that really shook me up, and
hmm
I think you're the other than my wife, you're the first person that I'm telling. I think.
Oh wow.
So and now the listeners listening. But so I was I think this was Sunday night, so it was 4 nights ago, whatever it was, 3 nights ago.
Right.
And I was working in my studio and I finished what I was doing and my dog, he's upstairs in a cage
hmm
and he started barking and he doesn't normally bark through the night. Like it's very rare to hear him. He sleeps all through the night. Out of all the kids and everyone, he's like the best sleeper and he's barking. So I was like, what's going on? So that's a bit weird. So I've got up and I can hear someone downstairs walking
hmm
around. So I'm a little bit, oh, this is weird because I think everyone's in bed, but I'm thinking it must be my wife downstairs doing something. Anyway, I've looked downstairs, then I can't hear anything. And I'm like, that's weird. And I've gone into my bedroom, gone into the kids' bedroom. The wife's asleep, the kids are asleep, everyone's asleep. And I was like, oh, like my heart's going. And I went to the top of the stairs again just to look down. I'm a bit scared to go down. I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking,
Right.
I think that there could be a burglar in the house.
Absolutely.
And I heard something again, something very like loudly walking around, and my dog started barking again. And my heart's going right. I've got the dog out the cage. I'm thinking there's someone in the house.
hmm
I'm not thinking ghost. I'm thinking we've got an intruder. So
Yep.
I've said to my dog, "Come on, boy, let's go get whoever this is." Gone downstairs, looked in every room, every door's locked, all the windows are shut. Nothing there, man. And I was
S-
very scared.
So you said your dog has like never done this before?
No, no, during the night, I've not
S-
heard him bark during the night. No.
So I'm about to hit you with something really interesting.
Oh.
And if you read the Taylor Mill horror, it's in there, my book.
Mm-hmm.
I've had something around me um that does this exact same thing. And it's always with dogs, and it's always walking around at night. Now, whenever I would interact with someone, go stay at their house, the next day they would experience that activity. So there for like a year of my time, I did not stay with anyone. I didn't really talk to many people because the day after, they would have the same experience. They would hear someone walking, their dogs would start going crazy, and this would
No
happen all
way.
the time. I swear on everything, man. It's in the book. It's something that I've talked about on, if you listen to any of my other podcasts, it's on there,
Man.
and it's the same figure. And it's crazy because I first experienced it after I went to two of my best friends' house. They were engaged at the time, and she called me late at night. She was crying. She was like, I need you to come over right now. And it was like, oh man, this was years ago. Like I was just out of high school. It was probably like 11, 12 o'clock at night. They were like an hour and a half away, but I'm like, there's something really wrong. So I need to go and see what's going on, you know? So I drive out there, and they're all sleeping in the living room of her parents' house on the couches because her parents were out of town. They were watching the house. And I was like, okay, it's not out of the ordinary because they used to have like movie nights and sleep in the living room. And I was like, okay. Uh, so they're both asleep and I fall asleep. But the next night I stayed the night, I had a interaction with what a lot of people know as the Hat Man. And what had happened was I was asleep upstairs. This night they finally slept in bedrooms, and I was asleep upstairs. And I got up and I had to go to the bathroom. So there's a long hallway, and the bathroom's like in the middle of the hallway, and then down the hallway is another bedroom. And I see someone sitting on the bed in the other bedroom with like their back turned to me. And I was like, oh man, they probably got in another fight, and he's up here. So I call out to him, and he's not responding to me. And I'm like, what's going on? Like something's wrong. And then once I get closer, like instantly my instincts kicked in. And I'm like, this isn't him. And so this figure stands up and walks towards me and walks through me. And as it walked through me, I hit the ground and just started bawling. Like it was like the worst feeling ever. But fast forward, I found out that this was an entity that she had seen since as a child, and as her sister had too. But they never talked about it, and they never knew that each other were seeing this thing till years and years later. And the reason why she called me over that night was because this thing was walking back and forth in the kitchen, and each time it got close to her dog started going insane.
Wow.
And now her husband had the same situation happen, but his dog, who he loved his entire life, they were best friends, actually ended up ripping off half of his face. Um, he said it was sitting there crying at the stairs, and he was like, "What's wrong, buddy? What's wrong?" And then he goes up to it, and then the dog, just for no reason, never attacked anyone, nothing, just ripped off half of his face. And then when you
Oh,
look into Taylor Mill horror, it's the exact same thing. This thing that hates dogs actually end up killing this guy's dog, but he was saying the same thing. This thing would interact with his dog, and his dog would just start going nuts. And then I went to probably like four or five other friends' homes over this year, and they would hit me up the next day and be like, "What did you do?" And they would all explain the exact same activity, exactly how you're explaining it.
wow, man. I find that
This is
really strange that we're
me
talking
too.
now.
Me too, because I haven't heard of this for a while. Like it's been dormant, but you're a couple miles away from me.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So the fact that you
I'm
experienced this
across
right
the
before we
pond,
start
man.
talking, that's insane.
That's really people listening now are going to be like, Tommy's heard you on another podcast talking about this, but I've not. Like this,
Right,
that's the
right, right.
first. That's wild, man.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane.
Because my dog, as I said, my dog doesn't bark through the night, doesn't, and he was getting like with whatever he was hearing was
Hmm.
agitating him. He was getting quite aggressive, which is what was worrying me as
Yeah,
well. Because I'm like, he doesn't do that, and
yeah,
if the wife's downstairs, he's not barking. That wouldn't bother him. So that's really weird, man.
yeah. It seems
What's
like this thing it mainly interacts with dogs, and as far as people goes, it will just kind of like watch you. I had my other best friend years and years later. I stayed over at his house a couple nights, and he started having the same activity with his dog. And then he actually saw this figure, but then one night he had this huge, I don't know how to explain it, like a sculpture that hung above his couch. I mean, this thing was like 50 pounds, right? And he had a very small dog, and he watched as this sculpture lifted off the wall and laid it on top of his dog, like flew and landed on top of his dog. But he was having the same activity where his dog would just start going insane.
And this is something that follows you as well, whatever this
Yeah,
entity is.
it's weird because, like I said, I experienced it first with my best friends, and then it would have been, God, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later when I go to Taylor Mill to investigate there, and there the owner is talking about this exact same entity there. So I'm like, what are the odds that I experienced this, 4 or 5 years ago, and now this guy's been experiencing this, in real time? Like, does it know? And my question was always, was this like predestination type of thing where like the universe knew I was going there, so I experienced this beforehand, or did this thing know I was going there, so it went there beforehand? I don't
Yeah,
know, but with
man,
you experiencing it before we talk,
that's so weird.
it's
That's
crazy.
I've said it before on the show. I don't believe in coincidences anymore
Right. I
because
don't either.
there's just that's wild, man. What's the chances of that? I wasn't even planning on talking about that. That was just, you know what I mean? That's just because
Yeah, it's
that's
wild.
that is wild, man. This paranormal game, man,
Yeah, man,
is
it's no joke.
fascinating stuff. I mean, and I was honestly like that because I've experienced quite. People listening to the show will know that I've experienced quite a lot of stuff
Hmm.
throughout my life. I've experienced quite a lot of paranormal, and I've been scared, obviously, many times, but I was very, very scared. And more because I thought it was an actual intruder. Like I
Exactly.
really thought there was someone breaking in the house.
Yep.
But the fear was real, man, like real terror.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's always the scariest part, is thinking that it's a person. Like even
Mm,
when I go these places and investigate, you get so terrified that it's an actual person who's in there. And only one time have I had an actual person break in, but still, it always terrifies me when you hear things where like that could not be anything but a person.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's wild, man. I can't believe I've told you that and you've got that
Yeah.
connection there. Wow, man.
So in the
Woo.
podcast,
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, great talking to you, man. Uh, wild, bro. So when you saw, because you said you saw the Hat Man in
uh-huh.
your friend's house, can you? Because I find that so interesting because so many people experience the Hat Man.
Right.
I've seen shadow figures before. I wouldn't say I've ever seen the hat, but how would you describe? How did it look?
Oh man. I would say it was probably at least 7 foot tall.
Oh
At
wow.
least 7 foot tall, just completely pitch black. No lights were on, but you could still see, like the cliche darker than the darker that surrounded it.
Hmm.
And you could just see like a fedora. That was it. Now, with my one buddy who had the sculpture following his dog, he said that he saw it. Now, I didn't tell him anything about this whole situation or anything, but he saw it, but he said it had red eyes when he saw it, and he was ready to shoot it. Um, so yeah, I don't it's such a crazy phenomena that just kind of took off. I don't
Hmm.
know if it could be a tulpa type of thing where like so many people are feeding energy into it, so now it exists, or if it's just been here for, forever. It's like my good friend that I investigated a long time with, we talk about it all the time, especially with like elementals and stuff like that. We were talking the other day, like, the paranormal really isn't paranormal because this has been around longer than we have. So why are
Hmm.
we calling it the paranormal? It's like, yeah, you're right, but it's still kind of paranormal to us. So, who
Yeah,
knows how long this thing could have been around for?
yeah, man. Yeah, it's fascinating how many people see this thing, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. And in Japan, they had the same thing, but it's a female. And they
Really?
all claim to see it over there. Yeah.
So it's a different shape that you can tell it's a
Yes.
feminine shape.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting. That is interesting, man. Because I mean, if I had a list for how many people that have told me they've seen the Hat Man,
Hmm.
like it's wild, man. I mean I've woken up during the night and seen the shape of a man standing over me. I've seen the
Right.
shadow figure darker than the dark, how people say I've seen that, and that's
Yep.
terrifying. And it's just it's it's wild to me how common it is.
Oh, I know. I know.
Even people that will say to you, I don't really believe in the paranormal.
Exactly.
I have seen it.
Yeah. That's always my favorite. I
You
don't really
know,
believe in the paranormal,
yeah.
but
I saw a ghost lady on the end of my bed this time. And I've had that.
right.
So many people say that.
Oh yeah.
Wild, man. So interesting. So where does it start for you? How did you like what was the sort of first experiences you were getting as a kid?
Um, I used to hear the voice of a little girl all the time. That was really common for me. And then seeing the apparition of a older man and woman who appeared to be husband and wife kind of walk up to my room and kind of just acknowledge me and then just kind of disappear. Um, those are my most vivid memories, like the first things I started experiencing as a kid.
Were they like a solid form?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I used to get terrified because I thought it was someone breaking into the home, like you said.
Mhm.
Um, but then I started realizing like they would come up the stairs because there's a staircase right outside my room, and I could see them like coming up the stairs, but there was no sound. And in this really old home, if you move a centimeter, the entire house is hearing it because it's all those crickety wood floors and stuff like that. And then as a child, is when I started realizing, like, wait a second, I can't hear them, but I can see them. That's what I started like thinking, like, okay.
How old was you, sorry, when that happened?
I was probably, I don't know. I mean, I was probably, I mean, I was under 10. I know that for sure, but I mean, I can't pinpoint because like I said, I feel like it's been here since I've been here type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah. Man, that's terrifying. So they would walk up to your bed,
Hmm.
acknowledge you, and then just disappear.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They'd walk out right outside my room, to the door and they would acknowledge me and then just disappear. And then after a while, even today, I sleep with doors closed. And I'm pretty sure that's because of that,
Hmm.
as a child. But I started closing my door, then I stopped seeing them. Because it did terrify me as a kid. Now as an adult, I would give anything to go back and
Yeah.
experience that again.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, I've said it on the show before as well. I sleep if I'm on my own, if the wife's away or if I'm in a hotel or whatever, and
Hmm.
I'm on my own, I will have probably the bathroom light on in the hotel and the telly. I don't
Okay.
I don't like the darkness on my own. Like I really and I think going back from my experience as a kid seeing stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy how your mind kind of does that to you. And you
Yeah.
don't even realize it, and you're like, wait a second, maybe that's because of.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It's you see something like that and it's with you forever, you know?
Right, right.
You can't unsee that. It's amazing. It's an
Mm.
amazing, as you said, an amazing thing to see.
Oh yeah.
Can you remember what era they were from? The apparitions you were seeing?
I don't really know. They were definitely it was definitely an old era because they definitely looked like farmers. And this is a farmhouse, so it would make sense. And there's another interesting thing that actually in my room now, I had this big symbol appear one day that was like it was burnt into the ground and it stayed there for a couple weeks. And eventually it disappeared and I didn't know what it meant. And my buddy, I asked him, who I investigate a little bit with now, and I asked him because he's Native American, he knows a lot about this stuff, and he said, "Oh, that's how they used to track the seasons and when it was good to plant. It's this little symbol, and by the sunlight and how it reflects in there, they would know when it's a good time to plant, was a good time." I'm like, that's insane, man. Like he solved like a 20-year-old mystery for me right there.
Wow. How often would you see that symbol? Was that a one-off thing or was that?
That was a one-off thing. Happened once, never happened again. It was weird, but like I said, it stayed there for weeks, and it was literally looked like it was burnt into the wood floor, and then over the years, it just faded away and disappeared.
Wow, man. So the farm you're in that was built, you say that was on Native American land?
Yeah, that's the rumor. especially because there for a while on our neighbor's property, there was an area where no electronics or anything would work. His lawnmower would instantly die over there. He had to have one of those old school push mowers, like with the wheels. And any sort of vehicles, any sort of anything would just stop working. And I mean, we found arrowheads, horseshoes, stuff like that on the property. And there's a creek that runs right behind the house. So it's definitely we're the town I'm in is called Shawnee, and it's definitely for the Shawnee tribe is really prevalent around here. So they were definitely here.
Hmm.
And it's pretty likely that, they were where I sit right now.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's wild.
So would you say the experiences that you had as a kid, seeing those apparitions so regularly, that sort of set you up? Like there's no like because like you when I was a kid, I saw an apparition in my room
Hmm.
of a full-bodied man sitting there. And once I saw that, and there was no doubt in my mind that that was in my mind or that wasn't real, like that was there.
Yeah.
That once you like accept that, do you think that's why you've carried on having experiences throughout your life?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I'm actually putting together a presentation now for an event I'm doing here in a little while, and there's this man, and let me get his name right. His name is Anil Seth, and he is this neuroscientist. Actually, he's from the University of Sussex. So he came out with this not too long ago, where he said that we live in a permanent hallucination, and this is so fascinating to me. And the way that he describes it, and it makes sense, is it's evolution. And he says, if you really want to understand it, if you take your finger and place it on your nose, you feel it both locations at the same time, but that's physically impossible because it takes so long for the impulses to travel to your brain, especially from your finger to your brain and your nose to your brain are different. So what he's saying is we're in a hallucination, and everything that we see around us is a hallucination, and then our brain kind of learns from different interactions and stuff like that. So one of the questions he proposed is what exists around us that we can't see because our brain doesn't know to see it yet. So that makes me wonder, like you said, as a child, when we have this imagination where we don't really know what reality is, right? We have
Hmm.
these experiences, we see these things, our brain accepts them. And now going into adulthood, we have a knowledge like, okay, this stuff exists. Does that allow us to see it more? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting, man. Because most people you talk to, that I talk to, when it comes to the paranormal, when they're guys like us that are like so into it and have
Mhm.
experiences regularly, it seems to have started as a kid. It seems to have
Right.
started from a very young age, um, and you just have a knowing, I guess, that there's more, and that opens you up to seeing more.
Yeah, and it's extremely rare that you'll find someone who said, "Yeah, I had an experience as a kid, then after that, I've never experienced anything ever again." Right.
100%. Yeah, yeah,
So I think there might be something very valid to that for
yeah,
whatever reason.
yeah, man. There's definitely a lot of things going on around us that we can't always see, and
Absolutely.
sometimes we just get a glimpse.
Right.
And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, some of us seem to be a little bit more open to that. But yeah, it's wild.
It
And do you
really
think that's the
is.
same with like UFOs and stuff like that as well? Some of us see UFOs, some don't. I know some people are looking for it, and that might be what, like myself, then that might be why you see things. Like with the paranormal as well.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about UFOs. I kind of have a controversial standpoint that says that when we see them, they're not aliens
Hmm.
or anything like that. So I don't know what the UFO phenomena is, to be completely honest. I think 99% of them are explainable. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is stuff that we just don't know about because our militaries have stuff that's 10, 20, 30 years in advance of what we know. I
Yeah.
mean, our government had cell phones, a good 10, 15 years before we even knew this was possible, stuff like that. So I think that's a large percentage. I mean, especially you think about it. And I always say the entire world is a giant pissing contest. That's all it is. It's all governments are.
Hmm.
And we talk about UFOs flying over other military bases or flying over these nuclear sites. And it's like, why would aliens do that if they have the advanced technology? Doesn't make sense. But if I wanted to, kind of show that I'm better than your country, then I could say, hey, I can fly undetected over this. What are you going to do? You know?
Hmm.
So I think that's where a lot of the whole alien stuff comes from is just our governments.
Yeah,
But aliens are 100% out there. There's no doubt about it, you know.
yeah. No, no, I agree, man. I think yeah, definitely there's a lot of technology, secret technology that we just don't know about. I mean,
Exactly.
you think of what me and you can do with AI,
Right.
with what we're doing now,
Yeah.
with AI and stuff like that. There's so like, can you imagine what they can do, man? There's no way
Yeah, I don't want
there's
to.
no way we're on a level playing field.
No, not at all. They've got stuff so advanced that we can't even comprehend, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of that is what it is. We can't even comprehend it yet, possibly.
Right.
Interesting, man. Have you seen any UFOs or anything like that?
There's only been one time where I saw something that I thought was a UFO, and it was in Point Pleasant, West Virginia,
Cool
home of the
place.
Mothman.
Yes, I want to go
Yeah,
there, man.
yeah, it's a cool place. I was living kind of part time there, because by chance I met this guy who I started investigating with, and I became friends with him. So I live part time with him. It's like 4 hours away or something like that. And we were out at the TNT area where they used to store the explosives. And we were there late one night and saw this group of lights just slowly move over us. And there were probably, I don't know, 100 of them, and they were all in perfect triangular shapes. And we just sat there and watched as these all slowly went over us. And I don't know what it was, but it was definitely something strange. And that's the only thing that I can say that was some sort of, unidentified object that I saw.
Interesting, man. Were they like anything you've seen on the internet or on telly or anything? Have you seen anything
No,
like that?
I mean, this thing was probably at least 100 yards wide. Like that's how wide these things went.
Wow.
I mean, it had been at least 100 yards. I mean, this thing was massive, and it could have been, 20, 30, 40, 50 of them kind of all together, or it could have been one object. I don't know, but it was pretty wild.
Wow, man. How close would I know this is difficult, but how close would you say it was?
I have
Yeah.
no idea. It was in the dead of night. It was pitch black out there, and they just look like stars. And that's what we thought at first. But then we started realizing stars don't move, and they definitely don't
Yeah.
move like that.
Yeah.
And we just stared straight up, and we would watch as they just passed right by us. And then eventually the last one passed by us, and then it was just dark, you know?
Yeah. Man, it sounds like a mothership or something like that.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean that's a cool area. There seems to be a lot of high strangeness in that area, man.
Yeah, Point Pleasant is a really cool place, and it's an interesting area. The people there are very, very odd, to
Really?
say the least. Oh yeah, I mean, one of my favorite experiences was we were investigating at the Low Hotel, which is an old hotel right downtown. And we decided to try to talk to some people about the supposed hauntings, and we talked to the guy who runs the Mothman Museum, and he was like, really, you guys are hunting ghosts? He's like, you guys believe in that crap? Like, yeah. He's like, no, no, no. He's like, ghosts don't exist. He's like, but let me tell you about how the Mothman's real and how the FBI follows me home in a Black Hawk helicopter every single night. And he's dead serious about this. It's just, you just had the most interesting people ever down there,
I
man. I'm
want him on the
telling you.
show, man. Have you got his number?
He used to run the Mothman Museum. I don't know if he's still there or not,
Oh
but
wow.
he was microchipped. I mean, he had all these crazy things, but ghosts are ridiculous, but this stuff legit. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
it's an interesting group of people.
I've never understood that with paranormal people in the
I
paranormal where
no.
they'll argue about their like UFOs are not real, but you know,
Right.
dog man is 100% real. You
Right.
know, I know.
It's
I mean,
like once you're in the paranormal, there's a certain point where you're like, oh crap, literally everything's possible.
you've got
You
to
know?
accept it all, man. You've got to accept it all
You do.
because you can't write off anything. That's what I've learned as well. Like you can't, but nobody really has the answers to anything. I don't think
No,
so.
no.
You
And
can't.
the first time that I realized this was actually so I'm working on my series now, The Dead Chronicles, which is my new one, and I went back to a place I had an experience at 7 years ago. That stuck with me all this time, and but one of the things that I saw there was when I was down the basement. Now this was pretty newly acquired when I first went 7 years ago, and I saw a gnome in the basement. And I never thought that that existed. I never believed in it. Yeah, that's ridiculous. And so my partner looked at me and he was like, "You saw something. What'd you see?" And I was like, "I'm not telling you. It's the dumbest thing ever." And I eventually told him, and then he made fun of me for the rest of the week that we were there. But when we met with the owner, we said, "We don't want you to give us a tour now. We want you to come back on our last day and tell us all the claims, all the areas, see if we can line anything up." And we get down to the area where we talked about the gnomes, and or when I saw the gnome, and he kind of like was walking through. He's like, "Oh," he was like, "Actually, I got something." He was like, this guy claims that he captured a gnome down here. He's got it on video." And I was like, "Oh my God." So I go back 7 years later, and this is widely accepted. Now everyone who volunteers there has seen these gnomes. A lot of people who investigate there have seen these gnomes. And it's just wild. And after that point, I was like, holy crap. These things that I knew for a fact didn't exist now exist. Anything's possible. We just opened up the
Yeah,
floodgates, right?
yeah, man. Can you explain what that looked like? Because that gnomes and little people cryptids, that's some of my favorite stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it stood probably I don't know, it's probably 2.5 feet high. It was just a black shape. It had like the rounded head and the pointed hat. And that's what I saw. And now people are not only seeing that same one, but they're seeing other like variations of it. And come to find out, once again, this is very populated Native American land at one point. So we go back to elementals and stuff like that. Who knows? But
Mhm.
it's just so wild that now so many people have experienced these gnomes.
Yeah,
It's crazy, man.
yeah. Well, you think gnomes, little people, these trickster type creatures,
Hmm.
whatever they are, they're in so many different cultures around the world.
Right, right.
Like they're everywhere. Like in the UK, in the US, they're all around. Like so, and even before we started communicating, like the world's one now. I would say, like
Yes,
communication wise, like we can talk to anyone, anywhere. We get the information from everywhere. But back in the day,
exactly.
like well, who knows if we did? But I don't think we could share these stories all around the world. So how do we get
Right.
Bigfoot, Dogman, gnomes everywhere? Like everyone's got these stories.
Exactly. That's what I always say, especially here with the Native Americans. I always say, even though I'm a very much a skeptical believer, but if I'm going to believe anyone, it's going to be the people who are the most connected with the earth, the land, the environment, and everything else.
Mm,
And that's what the Native Americans were, and the early settlers over there, because they had to be. They had to live off of this land. They had to know all the threats, all the dangers. They had to know everything. And if they're reporting these things, it's like, well, there's got to be something to it, right? Like, no one has ever been so connected with the earth and like their surroundings than they were back then.
Yeah, man. Man, that's wild that you saw the gnome. I've
Oh
got
yeah.
I've got more questions about this, man. How
Let's
how
have it.
how long did that last for, that experience?
So for me, it was probably a matter of like maybe 5 seconds. So I saw it, and then like, I guess it realized it saw me, then it darted off into a room. Now this is the same thing that other people have seen, and they say always when they acknowledge it, it darts off. Now later that night, I had another experience, and it's crazy because 7 years later, like I said, I had multiple experiences there that totally changed everything. And 7 years later, I go back, I meet with the owner, and he remembers all these stories like it was yesterday. And one of them was we were sitting in this room, and I had a camera set up in this doorway, a camera set up in this doorway, and so every angle was covered. And I saw what looked like a gnome up in this little like door frame, or like the window above the door. And I'm like, holy crap! And then I see it kind of crawl down. And then I'm like, okay, that was insane. And then I see a figure walk past the other door. And I'm like, that was absolutely insane. But I have this all on camera. Like, there's no doubt about it. And then we go back and we look at the cameras. The one that was where it was in the door frame, it somehow got turned off, and the other camera got turned. Don't know how,
Oh
but it got
man.
turned to where it pointed right at the wall. And this is the stuff that they still experience at this jail all the time. This trickster vibe with these gnomes, you know?
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy.
Wow, man. And was that were they like a silhouette as well?
Yeah, yep. That's all that I've seen him as. I've only seen him twice, and that's what I've seen him as both times. Now, other people have seen the actual figures. They've seen the actual faces and stuff like that. I haven't. I just always saw the black shadows.
Yeah. Interesting because I've talked to a lot of people that have seen these creatures as well. And like you're saying, most of the time they appear in like black shadow, or I've even heard brown shadows.
Oh, really?
I've heard that as well quite a lot where they just look brown, but you can see like the shape of the hat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's wild.
people that have seen them in full color, how do they describe them? If you know that.
Yeah, I see the people who have seen them in color, they don't even know completely how to explain them. I guess it's that strange and weird because the owner is one of those people who've seen it in full color. And he tried to explain it to me. He said the hat's completely different. The face was weird. Like he can't even fully describe it. He was like, I might be able to draw a picture. He was like, but I don't even know how to fully describe what it is that I'd seen. But I think part of the reason why is because as soon as you like acknowledge it or like see it, they always take off. It's like they want to mess with you, but they don't want to be seen, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, the tricksters. That's what they.
Yes.
What do you
Yeah.
think these creatures are?
You know, I don't know. Like once again, I have to go back to some sort of native creatures. And I know that there's I'm trying to think, there's a really popular story that I'm trying to remember. Um, actually, no, I take it back. It's someone that I know who said that they had these little people on their property and they used to see their parents go out and make offerings to them and they would appear around them. Um, and so I just have to go back to it has to be something that I'm not saying that it's because of the natives, but it's something that they have documented. So this stuff has been around since all the way back then, and probably possibly even before them.
Hmm.
I mean, what is it? I have no idea. I can't even fully believe this stuff exists, even though I saw it. Like it's so insane, you know. Like I didn't even know that people actually claim to see these things, right? Like
Hmm.
I didn't know if that was a thing that people saw. Then I saw it, and I'm like, okay, what the heck,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's just so
That's
ridiculous.
that's such a cool thing to see, though, man. That would be. I always say on the show, I want to see a Sasquatch. Like that
Yeah.
is the dream one day is to see a full Sasquatch, like a cool experience. But I'd love to see one of them as well, man. That
Yeah,
would
that'd
be.
be awesome.
Oh man. Sorry, I'm geeking out a little bit.
No, I get it, man. I get it.
Oh, what other things have you seen?
Oh man. So latest one of the coolest things that I've seen. Well, actually, I'll give you two of the latest, and it's both at the same place. At the Randolph County Asylum, one of the places that I filmed at for the series. I spent a lot of time there. Pretty much like every other weekend, I'm there hanging out. Um, So one of the coolest things I saw was there was a group there doing a tour. And they were inside this room and I was just hanging out in the hallway, just staying away from the tour, just kind of hanging out. And I see this figure walk out of this room and down the hall. And I saw it kind of out of my peripheral vision. And I'm like, I didn't just see that. So I started staring down the hall. And about 2, 3 seconds later, I see the exact same thing again. And I'm like, okay, now I know I'm going crazy because you don't see this type of thing. You especially don't see it back to back within, like 5 seconds. So then one of the volunteers had come upstairs because one of the girls in the group had to go to the bathroom. She was too afraid to go by her own. So she escorted her down the bathroom, brought her back up. So she comes up, she's standing next to me, and it happens again. And she says to me, she said, did you just see that man? And I said, no, you did not just see that. She's like, yeah. I said, that's the third time I've seen that in under a minute. And so this room is really freaking interesting. Um, this room, I had tons of dreams about it years ago. And it was something that kept saying, come in here, we could use you, we could use your energy. And it was just like this voice. And so when I went back, probably like 3 years ago, I filmed there and I went up into this room and I was there with someone else. And the only thing I remember is them like shaking me. And I'm like, what's going on? And they said, you've been standing there for like 25 minutes just staring at the wall. I was like, no, that never happened. Like that, no way. And she was like, I swear to God, I was terrified. I was screaming your name. You wouldn't respond, nothing. She said, you just kept staring at that wall. So I was kind of intrigued by it. And I just went back to this location this past year for the first time in like 3 years. I was talking to one of the people who works there, and they were talking about this room and how it appears to be some sort of time slip. And they said the reason why they think that is because there was a woman who was there about a year ago, and she was pacing around this room, kind of like going out of her mind and like talking nonsense and all this other stuff. And to this day, they still hear that woman in that room. And that woman came back a year later and they captured it. So they think that this room is some sort of weird time slip, which would explain why I
Oh,
saw the same thing 3 times in a row in under a minute do the exact same thing. It's just like some weird glitch in time. It would also explain my time slip in there where I thought I was in there for like 2 seconds and it was like 25 minutes, you know? It's so, like we said, you get into the paranormal, man. This is so strange. All of
yeah,
it. You just get
yeah,
deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole.
100, yeah, 100%. And you open one door and it opens another 10. You're like, oh
Yeah.
man, what was you
And
seeing? Do you say it was a, what was you seeing walking around 3 times? Did you say it
it
was a,
was just, yeah, it was just like this shadow figure of a man. It was
yeah,
kind of like, so it wasn't like a shadow figure kind of like we think. It was almost like, I'm trying to think, like static. Like if
mhm,
you turn on your TV and it has that static, it kind of had that look and it was translucent, but you could still definitely see it. And it walked out of the room and right down the hall. And then after it went down the hall, you couldn't see it anymore because there was a hall going the opposite direction. Okay.
mhm.
So walk out and walk down the hall. Once you lost sight of it, you lost sight of it. And it just did the exact same thing, exact same motion, exact same speed, everything 3 times. And it was wild, man.
Wow, man. So the lady that they recorded
Yes.
acting erratically in the room,
Yes.
you could hear her before
Mm-hmm.
she was recorded actually doing that in the room.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild, man.
And going back to the jail, it's interesting there too, because I heard for a couple of months before I went back that they swear that this place was haunted by one of the people who worked there. And I didn't believe it. And then I went there and I was there alone. I was filming and I come up the stairs and I hear him talking. The problem is the man who worked there is now the owner who's still very alive. And I called him and he was like an hour away at another one of their properties. And here I'm hearing his voice in there. And he's actually captured his own self inside there and on audio. And all these people hear him still in this jail, but he's still here. He's still alive and well, you know?
Man,
It's crazy.
that's what I mean. I've experienced hearing like family members call me
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and they're not in the house or whatever.
Right.
My wife actually had it recently where I was at work, but she heard me call her,
Hmm.
and she was like, she said she laughed to herself because it was just so weird. Um, but that's but for you to for them to be experiencing that there constantly, that's very weird as
Right.
well. What's that all
Yeah.
about, man?
I mean, so it makes you wonder, is it either the trickster thing, which we know definitely exists there, or
Hmm.
for example, I don't know if you're familiar with Jim Jones, the infamous cult leader. So one of his churches is actually not far, and I got to investigate that place. Um, and everyone asks, why would a church be haunted? And I said, I think it's the same reason that cemeteries are haunted. I don't think cemeteries are haunted because the people were buried there. But you think about the amount of emotion that gets poured into those, and people thinking about these people being alive, people that are crying. I mean, there's so much emotion. And then you go to churches, it's the same way. People compare stuff to religious experiences because it's so strong in emotion. Maybe that's the same thing that we're experiencing with, him at the jail because, he was working at jail. He's putting all that time, all that effort. You go to work, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of, and you do that day in and day out,
Hmm.
could it be something residual for the living, right?
Yeah.
And even at home, there's all kinds of emotions and stuff. Like, could we be creating our own hauntings with this same residual activity that we can experience ourselves while we're alive, you know?
Yeah. My mind's just
Right,
blown there, brother.
right. It's
Man.
wild. I
But it's a
just I also investigated a an old military base here, and they had converted it into a haunted attraction for Halloween season.
oh, cool.
And they have all these claims, and as I'm listening, it's wild because all their claims line up with the haunted house. So they claim that there's this man who's here who's busy, he's working his desk, he doesn't like people in there. And I go in there and there's a desk in there with all these papers and stuff. And it's like, it sounds like you're creating this yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and we go into this haunted season. I'm excited. I kind of want to go back after they close for the season and just see all these people in there throwing all this emotion in there.
Hmm.
Is there going to be activity right after that? You're
Yeah.
pouring all this stuff in there.
It's a little bit like what you were saying at the start with the Hat Man.
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
we
yeah,
are we creating this entity? Is that why so many of us are seeing it? Because we're all putting it out there and we're making it real. Like, it's
exactly.
just a possibility. But
Yeah, that's how I feel about, people like to say, especially with religious things, like none of that stuff exists. Religion exists, this doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, you can say that, these entities don't exist, but think about at least a couple days every week. We've got hundreds of thousands of people in these churches and these temples and these, mosques thinking about these entities collectively. Could that not be creating them? Like, even if you're saying that they don't actually exist before these biblical texts or whatever sacred text, could they not exist now because they're being created? You know?
mhm. Yeah, yeah, man, blowing my mind tonight, brother. You're opening my mind's going in
That's what
about
I'm here for.
50 million places right now. Like, whoa.
Right. That's me every night when I try to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's the worst, man, isn't it? You can
Oh
be
yeah.
you can be super tired. I don't know about you, but I can be so tired. I'm
Yes.
trying to watch a film and I'm falling asleep and I'm like, I'm gonna give up and just go to bed. And then as soon as I lay down, my mind's just I'm thinking about what I can do with the podcast. And
Exactly.
you're a wide awake again. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Every night. Every night.
So would you consider yourself a sensitive, or how do you see yourself when it
Yeah,
comes
so
to the
that's
paranormal?
like I said, I'm a huge skeptical believer. So that's something that I always kind of denied. Although whenever I've been around someone or in a group investigating, there's always been more activity. I've gone with groups who have experienced zero activity to place, and then I show up with them, and then there's activity. And so it was something that I always thought, no, this isn't possible. This isn't the thing. I've had very strange dreams that end up coming true. One of the weird ones is Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. I got to investigate there this year. It's most famous because that's where James Earl Ray, the guy who supposedly assassinated Martin Luther King Jr., was kept. Very brutal prison. But I constantly had dreams about the hole there, down in the basement where they'd keep people in solitary. And I make it a point to not know anything about these locations before I go. I don't want to know the claims. I don't want to see them. I don't want anything that can, um, give me, I don't want to go in there and be like, oh, it could be this. I want to go in there fresh. And I kept having dreams about this over and over. And so when I went to film there, I got there probably about 11 in the morning, and I end up leaving around like 5, 6 in the morning. So I was there for like 18 hours, something crazy. But so I was there just shooting some daytime stuff, and I'd gone through. Then a couple other people showed up that I was going to film with, and we went down to the hole. And the one lady who I was with, she was like, "Look at the door down in the hole," because I was telling her about how I was having a dream about this certain cell, and I look at it, and my name is carved into this door. And I'm like, get out of here. There's no way. There's no way. And It's crazy because I even have posts on Facebook. I've saved them to where, weeks prior I was talking about this, and then I go there and I see this. And I even looked online. I was
Wow.
like, okay, maybe I somehow, even though I didn't research this place, maybe I at some point saw this door and, whatever. There's no photos over it out there on the internet anywhere that I can find, period. Um, so that was wild. But the first experience that I had that made me accept this was going back to my friend that I've been investigating with a little bit, who's a Native American. He's very much in tune with everything, and he's also very outspoken about being an empath and communicating all this stuff. And so he was trying to tell me for months, like, this is what you are. I'm like, nah, nah, nah. So we met up in Louisville, Kentucky, and we went to this hotel, and it was very strange because we would sit outside, have some drinks, and hang out 90% of the night. And this woman who worked at the desk would always come out and talk to us. There'd be other people who were there, and she would ignore them, come and talk to us. And it was just kind of weird to me. But so the second to last night we were there, she asked us why we were down there. We were down there because we were actually going to a event that he was set up at for the paranormal and stuff like that. And she was like, "Oh, so you guys are into that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Have you ever experienced anything here?" I'm like, "No, but we haven't really, you know, been paying attention." She was like, "Go walk around and let me know." So we're like, "All right, let's do it." So my buddy, he goes back to his room, and I'm walking down the hall up on the third floor. Now this is a giant hotel, hundreds of rooms, right? And so I'm just walking down the hallway, and instantly it just feels like it's punched in the face, like this super depressing, like suicide type of vibe from this one door. And I'm shaking, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I just continue walking. So then my buddy comes out and he starts walking around. He walks down the hall, he walks back, and he looks at me. And he was like, I forget the room number, but he was like room 503. And I'm like, shut up, dude. And he was like, woman killed herself in there. I'm like, shut up. So I'm like, okay.
Wow.
He was like, we're gonna go down, we're gonna talk to the woman and see what she says. So the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, all right, we're gonna go down there. She's gonna say that's the wrong room. I'm gonna be able to sleep tonight. Everything's be good. So we go down there and she's all happy. And my buddy says, what happened in this room? And she instantly starts sobbing. She was like, we need to talk outside. And that's when she tells us that the head housekeeper had died in that room, and they claimed it was accidental, but she thought it was suicide because it was drugs, but she had never been late to work. She was always there. She never had any issues. She didn't have a drug problem, but she overdosed on something in that room and took her own life. And at that point, I was like, all right, so we picked the same room in this giant hotel, had the same feelings, and we just got, I can't deny it now.
Yeah.
So now I'm very much more in tune to it, and it's more of a tool for me now.
Wow, man. And you just got that feeling straight away, that
Oh
knowing.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's like getting punched in the face, man. I don't know how else to describe it. It's crazy.
That's wild. It's interesting what you were saying about the dreams as well. And
Yeah.
did you say before you dreamt about that place where um
Yes.
the guy was you
Yes.
could hear the guy? Yeah.
Yeah, same room and
Interesting.
everything. I've had these dreams with all kinds of places. And most recently, my same friend, he bought a historical home in Hopkinsville, where the Hopkinsville Goblin incident took place. And it's pretty active, but I would have dreams about that home shortly before he bought it. And this woman would come to me and talk to me. And eventually he bought the home. And I would have these dreams where, for example, one night she kept talking about the library. She loves the library and all this stuff. And my buddy, he's working on remodeling this place, so I'm not getting to talk to him that much, like maybe once a week at this point. And I talked to him one day. I was like, "Dude, what's going on with the library?" And he was like, "What library?" And I said, "I don't know." I was like, "I swear this woman is talking to me about the library." He was like, "We were just talking about rebuilding that library because just the night before, because the man who owned the home, JB Knight, was a very popular lawyer, and he basically kind of like built that town. So he would have had a law library in there." He was like, "We were just talking." He was like, "All right, we're doing it now." So I would know about
Wow.
things
Yeah.
that were getting done in the house
Wow.
without him telling me about it. It was just so surreal.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
what do you think that is? I know. How do
I,
you what do you think is going on there, man?
I tell people all the time, like, I don't believe it. I don't believe in it, but it's hard to deny. Right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm such like, I love rational thinking. I love science. I love all that stuff.
Hmm.
And this just defies all of that. So it's so hard for me to like accept it.
Yeah,
So I don't know what it is. I couldn't tell you. I just know what happens, and
yeah.
whenever it happens, I had a buddy. One more story. I had a buddy who I kept having dreams about this man who said, "You need to help me. You need to find me. You need to find me. You need to find me." And it was this old man, and he kept saying over and over and over again. And so my friend hit me up that morning. He was like, "You will not believe what just happened." I said, "Why?" And he said, I went to this store early in the morning before work, and he said there was this car just sitting there. And he said it was weird. So I went up and I looked at it, and there was a man who was dead in the driver's seat. And I said, let me guess. And I described the man. He said, how did you know? And I said, he has been bugging me all night. He wanted to be found so bad.
Whoa.
So I don't know. Like, I sound crazy for talking about it. I feel
No,
like I'm
not at
crazy
all,
for
man.
talking
No,
about it,
yeah.
but
Not on this show, you're not,
it's
brother.
just right. Yeah, I'm with the crazy people,
You're
so
with the
we're
crazies.
all in the same padded cell right now. But it just happens, man. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. How, when you say he was bugging you, was that in your dream that he was bugging you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And you, what sort
Yeah.
of
I've
thing? I
started.
know it might be difficult, but what sort of things was he? What, how was he communicating with you in your dream?
So it's always kind of the same thing. It's a completely black area, and then it's just like the one person, like illuminated, right? And it was just him just standing there, just saying over and over and over again, you need to find me, you need to find me, you need to find me. And that's all it was.
Mhm.
Um, I had I've just had so many dreams like this where even deceased people that I didn't even know existed. For example, one of my friends, I didn't even know that who she calls her mom wasn't really her mom. And here I had this visitation from her actual mom. And so I described this woman to her to a T. And that one was really interesting because it was like watching a movie and I would get close-ups on very specific features of her. So it'd be like a full shot of her, and then I get close-ups of like her skin, like all of her identifiable features. And then when I described her to her, she instantly just started bawling. She was like, "That's my mom." And I would never expect it because this woman is very much your typical white, American female, and her mom was of like Latin descent. So, she had this very different appearance, and I would have never guessed it. Like, she doesn't look like she came from someone with any sort of, anything other in her. Um, but yeah, it's just wild how it happens, man. It's wild.
Man, how often do you experience?
Not very often, a couple times a year usually.
Mhm,
But sometimes, like when my buddy bought the house, it picked up because it's like they wanted to continually communicate.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's very, very rare. Maybe a couple times a year.
Do you think it's something that if you wanted to, however we can open ourselves up, do you think you could like open yourself up even more and be experiencing this all the time?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the dreams necessarily hasn't picked up. But as far as like feeling things, experiencing things out in the real world has definitely picked up a lot. My buddy explains it as people like us being a lighthouse in the dark to all these other spirits. They come because we're so open, because we're so, approachable, whatever. It's like moths to a flame, type of thing. So, he's coached me into like opening up more and more and more. And since I have, it's definitely things have definitely picked up. Yeah.
Interesting, man. It's so interesting. Because the thing is with the paranormal, we can't control it. Well, I don't know. I mean, some people I don't know,
Exactly.
but you can't control what's going to happen, and that's
No.
what freaks a lot of people out. It freaks me out Um, you know, things happen, man. And it's when
Yeah.
when you fully accept the paranormal, it's like anything is possible.
Yeah. 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 It's true. Literally anything's possible at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Wild stuff, brother. Austin, I've loved talking to you, man. You've opened my mind tonight.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
It's been awesome. Where can people find you and your awesome work?
So you guys can follow me. You can pick up my books. I got a book, Hell's Carnival and Taylor Mill Horror. You guys can pick that up on Amazon. And you can go follow my new project, The Dead Chronicles, on Facebook.
Awesome, brother. Well, man, I've loved talking to you tonight. I
Oh
hope
yeah, it's been a
I hope
pleasure.
I hope we can have many more conversations. I feel like there's a lot more we can talk about.
Absolutely.
We can go down some rabbit holes, brother, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's plenty to go down. We won't run out of them.
100%. I still can't believe how this episode started with me telling you my
I
experience and
know.
then you having that mad connection to it. That's wild
Welcome
to
to the
me.
paranormal.
100%, man. Yeah. There- It never ceases to amaze me, brother.
No.
Man, I've loved talking to you tonight, man. People need to check out your work. All the links are going to be in the show description. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you so
Oh, I'd
much,
love to
man.
be back.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff, brother. Thank you, man. Guys, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure you share it where you can. That's a great way to support us. And we're going to be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Thank you very much, brother. Good
Thank
night.
you.